The Pirates took down a potential World Series contender over the weekend.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day, brought to you by PrizePicks. Make sure you download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. And something I actually wanted to start the show with today, if there are a lot of new people due to a certain outlet no longer allowing podcasting. Hello, my name is Ethan Smith. I am a diehard Pirates fan, obviously Gary Morgan as well, my usual guest on Mondays. And, just bringing news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Now, in my fourth season of covering this team, and this is also a funny thing, if anybody paid attention to the airways on the internets, this is the first show that me and Gary are doing together where we actually have met each other in person now. If you guys saw that, we kind of had a Steel City Pirates meet up there for a minute with Michael and the guys from Bridge to Bucktober. Very fun to meet all of you guys. It was an absolutely fun time, even though it was a little cold. It's fine. They lost the game, but it's fine. And that will not be the last time I'm at PNC Park this year. I actually will probably be there later this month for the Red Sox series, so I might be there for that one. So yeah, get used to seeing me over there in PNC Park quite a bit as the season progresses. But Gary, we had a fun series to watch over the weekend. Obviously, the game we went to, the Pirates, was the lone game they lose in this series. The other two, man, there was a lot to unravel about this series because, as you heard at the top of what I said, I mean, you're really talking about a team that the Pirates faced this weekend that a lot of people are looking at as a World Series contending team. And the Pirates beat them in 2 out of 3 games. Now, was it the prettiest way of doing it? Probably not. But at the end of the day, a win is a win is a win. And what are your takeaways from what we watched this weekend from this Pirates team?
I think it continues to be amazing that Derek Shelton can just kind of push buttons in whatever order he thinks is best, and it just keeps working. They built a roster that has a lot of interchangeable parts, and I think it's going to give them the ability to mix and match as much as they like and kind of keep their lineup fresh. I don't think you're going to be able to game plan against them 100%. You can go in deciding you're not going to let O'Neal Cruz beat you, but you have no idea who's going to be hitting after him or before him or anything. I mean, yesterday's contest, they had Henry Davis hitting 9th.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't expect to see that, even though he struggled early on. So how could you game plan for facing this offense right now?
You really can't. And what's interesting, and it's something that I've kept track of ever since it kind of started, because I always joke that give it a week and then you can almost look at it as a trend. Well, I've given it 2 weeks and I was like, okay, this is getting very interesting that this specific player being in the lineup has resulted in wins. And Connor Joe, so far this year in the lineup, when he's there, the Pirates are 8-0 on the season. And when he's not, they're 0-2. Is that probably more coincidence than anything? Yes. But Connor Joe even is one of those guys that you just kind of look at and say, okay, he's made a positive impact so far. Michael A. Taylor has made a positive impact so far. I believe he sat the final 2 games of this series. And there's been a lot of those guys that you look around and you say, okay, these guys have been making real impacts. They're not just there to just be lineup filler. Jared Triolo, Henry Davis, even though with his slow start, has had his moments so far. And on the flip side, there are guys that have struggled, but I think Derek Shelton has also recognized that in guys like Jack Sawinski and Andrew McCutchen, who have not exactly had the quickest starts to 2024. And you've noticed that they haven't played as much. I mean, Kutch didn't play outside of the opener in this home series over the weekend. And another thing that I wanted to get at as far as thoughts and takeaways from the weekend, the starting pitching this weekend was very good for this Pirates team. Very good. I mean, you can make the argument right now after what Bailey Falter did on Saturday that the slowest starting pitcher they've had so far is Mitch Keller. I mean, you look at the other four guys and you say, okay, they've had a good start and a okay start. Jared Jones is just electric. We got to see him in person on Friday, and I believe I don't think he leads anymore in strikeouts due to the schedule, but 17 strikeouts for your first two is unforeseen from what we've seen from pitching prospects in the past. And then you look at Martin Perez, just kind of going back to who he is. And then yesterday, Bailey Falter, I know we give Bailey Falter a lot of crap, but Saturday, Bailey Falter had a pretty, am I getting them mixed up? Saturday was when Falter pitched. Yes. He just had a good day. I mean, he had a no-hitter, I believe, going into the sixth inning. It's not something that you really expected from a guy like Bailey Falter, especially against that Orioles offense. But I think you brought up something very important that people need to recognize about this team is they have contributors everywhere. And Derek Shelton, I think, is leaning into that too.
No, I totally agree. As far as the starting pitching goes, I mean, I wouldn't say that I was like overly optimistic about everybody, but I did tell you, Marco Gonzalez, if he's healthy, you're going to like him.
Yeah.
Martin Perez, if he's right, you're going to like him. So, I mean, a lot of the people that just want to push everybody off of this roster and like get to the next step real quick, pump your brakes and let it play out a little bit. You know, Bailey Falter in particular is a guy that he's probably not going to survive this season. You know, he doesn't have any options. If they eventually have to DFA him, he will get claimed. He'll get claimed very quickly too. I mean, somebody will want him somewhere. He's going to give you a good outing every once in a while. He's going to give you 2 or 3 bad ones to go with it. That's the way it is. When and if the next guy's ready, whether that be Priester or Skeens or anybody, that's probably the most likely spot. Mm-hmm. But you don't have to wish it into existence. It's going to happen one way or another. So, like, I don't know. Root for your Pirates right now. Like, they're all capable. Everybody that's here right now is capable of doing something. They look no further than Jose Hernandez. There's a guy that, like, basically jumped off a plane and was thrown into the back end of the bullpen to go ahead and get a big win against a World Series contending team. And you can't just ask that of every kid. That's a special kid that can come up and do things like that. And he's probably going to act in that swing role all year. I bet he'll go back to AAA within a week.
Yeah. And it's interesting that when you consider all this too, I brought up the bullpen a lot. The bullpen, again, has been very good through what we've seen. It was good over the weekend for the most part. Bednar, we'll talk about that in the next segment and throughout the show on my thoughts on that right now. But you also look around and you can argue again that this team isn't even full strength yet with what they have available. Liover Peguero and Nick Gonzalez are having pretty good starts to the year in AAA, if you guys haven't paid attention. Those guys are going to be up here, I think, at some point in some capacity. Alika Williams, I know he's like one of those other guys that everybody loves to crap on, but Alika Williams is another guy that I believe is out of options, isn't he?
No, he has options, but he's a guy that people love to suggest as a DFA, even though they don't need to do it.
But again, I mean, I do think that at some point, Peguero or Gonzalez will push themselves onto this roster. That's something that you can expect. And I think that's what's going to be interesting about this team. And I've said it since the jump of the season when they won on opening day. This version of the team, you're not going to like it as much as you like the version of the team you're going to see by August. The team you see by August is going to have all those players that you want on it, like a Quinn Priester potentially, or a Paul Skeens, or a Peguero, or a Gonzalez, or somebody else in the minors that you want to be up here. And if they're in contention, you might even see some outside additions that'll really help this team work. And I think that's the beauty of it right now is they're winning baseball games imperfectly. I think that's the perfect way of describing it so far, is the way
I
they're winning is
and
imperfect.
I would say it very slightly different. I don't necessarily need to go, oh yeah, in August this list of guys will be here. I don't think that anybody can really say that, and I don't think anybody really should. Like, if it goes all year and Piguero and Gonzalez don't make it back up here because Triolo and Alika Williams are doing well and they're in contention, hey, tough. I mean, like, that's
Yeah.
the team, man. Like, that's the way it is. Like, you don't have to like worry about that stuff the way that we always have throughout this process where you're constantly looking ahead to the next wave.
Hmm.
You should be at the point where you're kind of riding the wave a little bit now.
Yeah.
And you want to take the breaks as they come. You don't want to forecast them out. Let the surfboard take you where it takes you. You know what I mean? Like, stop pining for the future and worry about the now. And I
Yeah.
think you'll feel a lot better about the team. That's all.
Yeah, and they have a fun series that they get to go into tonight. Just a little twofer against the Detroit Tigers. We'll talk about that in the final segment of today's show. But we're going to talk about our thoughts through the first 10 games. Obviously, the 8-2 through the first 10 games, the positives and negatives, and more. But before we do that, we're going to talk about prize picks. PrizePicks, again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for the first deposit match up to $100 because PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. Baseball season is officially underway, so don't miss your chance to add your favorite players to the diamond in your PrizePicks entries. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, take your pick of more or less and add them to your PrizePicks entry today. So make sure you download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with PrizePicks. And folks, also, don't forget to check out Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories of the day. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And welcome back, of course, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day. I forgot your name, sir, but thank you for saying hi to my aunt, my mom, and my sister at church and letting them know that you listen to the show and are apparently friends with Gary, listening every Monday. Hopefully you're listening today and can comment below on that. That was really cool to see. Also, again, shout out to where is his name? I got to give this shout out. Kyle Carton from Sales. Sir, you were awesome and also scared the crap out of me in the 8th inning when you came up to me with a suit and tie asking who I was because I thought I did something wrong. Nice to hear that a good chunk of the Sales team listens to the show. So thank you guys for that as well. But again, you look through these first 10 games, Gary, and it's been fun. I don't think anybody can deny that. We've seen 3 walk-offs already. I believe we've seen 4 extra inning wins already. Yes, 4 because we had 1 in Washington, 1 in Miami, and 2 in this series. And they're 8-2. And really in the 2 games that they lost, and I'd even argue the Friday game, they didn't really get outmatched all that much. I mean, the Friday game, Jared Jones, if he has 2 pitches that don't go over the wall, that's a whole different game. And the offense could have done a lot more, I think, that day as well. But when you look at the positives of this team, what are some of the main positive points you've seen so far through 10 games?
I don't feel like there's a rest point in their lineup. No matter what order he puts them in, I don't feel like you ever go into the inning break thinking we're not going to come out and do something here. I mean, they may not, but you think it's possible every inning. at least one or two guys that you think have a good shot of getting on base. Like I don't know, man. It's a different feeling to me whenever you get to extras. I'm not like, oh man, this isn't the inning where Hayes and Reynolds are up, so we're kind of screwed. Like, it's okay, Connor Joe's leading off. All right. That's probably a good start. And boom. Like Brian Hayes is leading off. Okay, boom. Like it doesn't matter who leads off. We even won a game where I think it was Alika Williams and Jason DeLay bunted back to back at bats to move the runners around, and they wound up getting on themselves and winning that game in Miami. So any different way they can handle it, they're doing it. They're finding ways to win. And importantly, too, the losses have not been those big, tragic 14-1 losses that just kill your run differential and destroy like your bullpen. And they haven't run into those yet, and it's kept them fresh.
Yeah, and the two losses again. I mean, nothing really crazy happened in those games. I just think it was just a matter of you're going to lose games every once in a while. The Pirates can't go 162-0, folks. They're still on pace to go 160-2. I'm here to tell you that's not going to happen. It would be wonderful if it happened. This podcast would be very easy to cover if they were 160-2. But some of the positives for me, I think really, and it's something that actually stems from something that you brought up to me, is this bullpen so far, and this is actually going to lead into a negative. The bullpen so far has just been electric. It has. I mentioned before the year it'd be a top 10 unit. It is far from what it is going to be. Majinski and Holderman are not here. And it stems again, really, from something you mentioned, that David Bednar is practically having his spring training right now. I mean, really, in real time, you were watching David Bednar pretty much have his spring training because he didn't pitch all that much. Now, that is where I'd say at this juncture, Derek Shelton has pushed a lot of the right buttons. He just has. Is there a thought process with now 2 blown saves and 3 opportunities with him ramping up and still maybe nursing that lat injury that you maybe flip him around in that order where he's usually the closer typically, and you let him come in maybe in the 7th or the 8th inning and get his feet wet a little bit more in a less high leverage situation? Because you also have the options in the bullpen right now that you could have other closers like a Aroldis Chapman or not Baraki at this moment because he's hurt, but Jose Hernandez has shown that he can go in that spot and take care of it. And I think
Ryan.
Ryder Ryan.
Go on and on.
Yeah, and I think with Bednar right now, he just needs that time to ramp up, but I don't know if I want him doing it in the biggest spots of the game.
I'm pretty sure they don't either, but and I think yesterday was a good indication of what you can expect there. They had a big moment where they wanted to make sure that they got, to an opportunity to win there in the 9th. And who did they give the ball to? Aroldis Chapman, right? I mean, like, they didn't give it to David Bednar to do what he traditionally would do. So I think already you see that. One thing I really have come to respect about Derek Shelton's managing this year, okay, despite what your thoughts were about him before, I'm going to kind of hold firm to the fact that he didn't really have a good roster until this year. So this is the first year I'm truly trying to evaluate him as a manager, like at least fully. Obviously, I have little nuggets from on the way here, but I like that he is irreverent in certain ways. Like Andrew McCutchen doesn't just get to start and just stink and stay in the middle of the lineup. They've sat him quite a bit, and even in spring training, they were kind of getting on him about not running hard. Hey, I want you to run hard. If you're gonna play, you're gonna run hard. And Kutch joked back with them and everything. But I actually think there's a little bit more to that. I think there was a little bit more of like, no. Everybody on this team is going to do this stuff. Everybody on this team is going to do the hard work that it takes to do what we need to do. I think we'll see the same with David Bednar. If he's not performing, I don't think that they'll hesitate to pull him out of the closer role. I think they'll use him where they need to. I also think David will be okay.
Yeah,
It
he'll be
just
fine.
takes a little bit of time for him to start getting things honed in. The fastball up top has to really be up top. It's not bent. He's been leaving it too low in the zone, and he's getting hammered for it. This happens to him when he gets tired, and it happens to him when he's not stretched out. That's where we're at right now. The only alternative is to give him a Phantom IL trip and have him do it in the minors. But at some point, you're going to have to let him throw. And I think you're just going to see them continue to sneak him in there. And they're going to trust that if he blows a save, this team's going to go ahead and win it anyway because it's happened twice.
Yeah, it has. That's the interesting side of it too, is that both times he's blown a save, they haven't lost. So you have that side. And then I think it was amplified a lot yesterday as one of the final negative points. Yeah, sorry to end it on a negative point. But we've seen quite a bit of issues in two different areas. I'd say one, and this one's a lot less of an issue because I think it just is a part of being aggressive on the base pass. But the base running has been interesting, to say the least, especially at third base. And the fielding has overall, now not everybody, but the fielding overall has been a sticking point throughout the year to talk about because, I mean, it's just not been all that good. It
Right.
really hasn't. I mean, even Key Brian Hayes had that wild game. I believe it was against Miami where he had like 3 errors. And you're just like, okay, that's definitely an outlier. But we've seen the fielding kind of take a step back a little bit from, so at least to start the year, from what we saw last year overall. And with the addition of Michael A. Taylor, I don't think a lot of us expected that.
Yeah, I think, first of all, the outfield defense as a whole looks a lot better when Michael Taylor's out there.
Yes.
I think something we've watched this team do for years in the outfield is like every pop-up is an adventure. Every pop-up to the shallow outfield is an adventure. It's a problem. The second baseman or the shortstop looks like they could get there. Whoever's in the outfield tends to kind of freeze and or keep going for it. There's collisions. There's bad communication. Michael Taylor fixes all that. That's why it was so important to get a center fielder, because he's the communicator. Despite he and Brian Reynolds running into each other, even Brian Reynolds said after the game, I didn't hear him, but he definitely acknowledged that he was calling. You need a field general out there, and I think that's what Michael Taylor is. I don't know that Jack has that in him. I don't. And I know for a fact Brian doesn't.
Yeah.
He played center field. He's just not that type of guy. He's not going to yell. And you have to have that. You can't let those pop-ups fall. Like,
No.
somebody has to be the one to take command, and it's going to be the center fielder. So thank goodness for that. In the infield, it's youth, man. It's just youth. I don't know what else to say. Brian Hayes is a blow-up you just kind of ignore. That's one of the, hey, everybody's got a day, right? But everything else, it's youth. O'Neal Cruz needs to learn he doesn't need his full gun every 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And Triolo needs to realize that the clock can slow down for you a little bit if you know what you're doing. When you get the ball, don't panic. You got plenty of time. And Rowdy's been better than I think a lot of us assumed he would be at first base. So they clearly know something when they're identifying first baseman, because that's twice now that they've got somebody who was supposed to be an underwhelming defender who wound up being pretty decent, right? And Henry Davis has been fine. I mean, I went and looked at his numbers recently, and all the underlying numbers are telling you that he's not framing well, and he's not. I'm not seeing that. I mean, like, I get it, but like, I don't care. Like, I think he's been fine back there. So overall, I think they're trending in the right direction, but it's certainly a negative to watch that sort of thing. And the base running, that's been a Rebello problem for a couple of years, and it was a Joey Cora problem before that, and it's really stems from an overall organizational wish to be aggressive.
Yeah, I think the one that got me, and we'll end on this before we shift to the final segment today, was Cruz hitting a near cruise missile yesterday. And then you look at the like overarching camera, and one, you could tell that Cruz thought it was gone. And I was like, okay, I think a lot of people did. And Triolo, for instance, this is just my thought process on this. If there's even a sliver of a doubt that that ball is not going out, but you know it's a base hit, he should have been around third by the time that ball hit the wall at that point, or at least close. And
I think he just is a victim of having watched Cedric Mullins play center field and thought it might
yeah,
get caught.
yeah, Cedric Mullins, by the way, what a guy. What a guy. I love cheering his name. And I do think he acknowledged me one time when I was out there. One of my favorite center fielders in all of baseball is Cedric Mullins. But a lot of those negatives, I also think, and this sticking point too, and I think you would agree, a lot of these negatives too are good negatives because they're fixable. These are not things the Pirates can't fix. And they're pretty easy fixes at some point too. And we're going to talk about this little 2-game set that they have coming up against the Detroit Tigers with a certain somebody on the mound again tonight that we hope can finally get back to his form. But before we do that, we're going to talk about Game Time. Well, if you want last-minute tickets to tonight's game between the Detroit Tigers and the Pittsburgh Pirates at 6:40, download the Game Time app today and use code FIRSTPITCH for $20 off a minimum $150 purchase, because Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. The lowest price guarantee will indeed make sure that Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find a better price somewhere else. You also get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time, and for a limited time, all users can get $20 off any MLB purchase of $150 or more in the Game Time app with code FIRSTPITCH. Terms apply. That's code FIRSTPITCH for $20 off from March 25th to April 14th only. And download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And folks, we have another series against an American League team to look forward to today and tomorrow. Nice little 2-game set against the Detroit Tigers. Has become somewhat of a tradition of sorts to play this kind of series with the Tigers over the last couple of years.
Well,
And
they're supposed to be our rival, Ethan. So
really,
yes, that's why we're playing these every year. They're supposed to be our rival.
okay. I don't really think many Pirates fans have reasons to hate the Tigers. I think and the fact that we also named the series after a conjoined manager, I think throws that one out. But hey, I guess they'll tell us who we're supposed
It's
to root
because
for.
Cincinnati got Cleveland.
Oh, that's yeah. Okay, that makes sense then. Yeah, you got to have that Ohio series in there every once in a while. But nevertheless, the Jim Leland series, as I like to call it, will kick off today, 6:40. And you probably heard me mention that Mitch Keller is going to be on the mound for this one for his third start. Mitch, stop throwing the cutter, bud. Just go out there and just go out there and do your thing. Detroit, it looks like, is going to have, if this would load for me, I always forget his first name, Olsen, from their starting pitching staff. Reese Olsen. There we go. So far on the year for him, 5 2/3, 3 strikeouts. Nothing really to go crazy about. 3.79 career ERA. It's very good for him. Really, I was going to ask you, Gary, what your keys to this series are, but I feel like they're going to be just about the same of what the Pirates have been doing. I mean, just keep doing what you're doing, right?
Yeah, I mean, the key thing to look for in this series to me is Mitch Keller's outing. Detroit is a perfect team to get right against. they don't hit. They look
No.
awful this year so far. In fact, when I did the series preview for our site, I had a hard time finding somebody who was hot, from their team. I really did. Nobody is. They're not hitting. They have a 623 team OPS. I mean, like they're not hitting. When they're winning, they're pitching, and that's their best claim to fame. It's going to be Tarek Skubal, and hopefully Casey Mize comes along for them. We're going to see him on Tuesday. And Reese has been really good too. So it should be a decent pitching team, but they just don't have the horses at the plate. They don't, and they're never going to outscore people. Most of their games that they did win this year, look at them, they're like 2-1, 3-1, 3-2. So they can pitch. I will give them that, but this team can milk pitchers too. So, and I think they can do it with impunity. So as long as Mitch Keller looks okay, great. Sad thing is, I think he might get away with the cutter against Detroit because they really aren't good. And I don't want him to learn that lesson. So in many ways, it might be better if he threw the cutter and got beat up by a team that nobody thought could do it. In the long run, you might almost take a loss here just to teach a lesson. But we'll see.
And you mentioned Casey Mize. We'll get Martin Perez on the Tuesday game. And again, you mentioned him earlier. I wanted that signing way, way early in the offseason, and I got it. And there's a reason why I wanted it.
Yeah.
The guy is ridiculous. And I think yesterday, Falter showed it a little bit on Saturday too. I think that a lot of people did finally have their eyes open to why having a good lefty starter in PNC Park is so important, because that park is built for guys like Marco Gonzalez and Martin Perez. It just is how they pitch and everything, because they're just forcing right-handed hitters to take that ball over the north side notch, and it's impossible sometimes to do it.
Right.
And
there's a reason guys like Rich Hill survived here for a little while and looked so much better here before getting shipped off. It's a ballpark built for it. You're wise to have it.
Yeah, and I think so far, now that you have two of those potentially in these kind of series, it would be kind of difficult. Well, it'll happen eventually where I think you see Perez and Gonzalez pitch in the same series in Pittsburgh, but I don't know when we have the next 4-game series in Pittsburgh. I think that's a while from now. I know we have a 4-game set later this week, though, against the Philadelphia Phillies. The teams that are playing right now are teams that I consider to be a part of this thing later in the year. And so far, they've stood tall, Gary, and they've stood firm. They've played good, and I don't think there's really any other way to spin it. I know it's imperfect the way they've done it, but baseball is an imperfect sport. I
actually like that better, man.
So do I.
Again, I don't think they've played their best game yet.
No.
So that's encouraging to me, because they're beating bad teams by not playing as well as they can, and they're able to stick with and stay really close and competitive with good teams while they're still not playing their best game. So that's what you need to hope for, really, from a winning team. That's how you become a winning team.
Yeah,
you overcome the adversity.
And so far, that's all they've done. I mean, they're 8-2 through the first 10. You go on that kind of pace for a while, we could be talking about April Bucko fever again. I mean, we had it last year. Let's just see if they can maintain it this year. Folks, thank you so much for tuning into the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day. Follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates Monday through Friday. Of course, follow Gary Morgan on Twitter at GaryMo2007. Check out 5 Thoughts at 5 today. I'm sure that'll be coming up soon. And then, of course, the Pirates Fan Forum every Thursday, live every Thursday, audio dropping every Saturday. Yep. I believe if you didn't watch it last week, I was there. It was fun. Me, Jim, and Gary, we had a great time. So make sure you check out all those things, folks, because baseball is in full swing and will be for the next several months. So you have tons of Pirates content that you can find between me and Gary. But until then, folks, thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your Monday, and I'll see you on the flip side.